Falaise Castle in northern France. The year is 1027. A young girl is tormented by a strange dream. An enormous tree bursts out from deep within her belly. Its branches spread and grow until it towers over the whole of Normandy, and then across the water to overshadow England too. The girl's name was Herleva, the daughter of the town's embalmer, and something was growing inside her. She'd just been seduced by the younger brother of the Duke of Normandy. Herleva's dream is only a legend, written down 100 years after the event. But it contains one historical certainty. She had conceived a son that night. He would be known as William the Bastard. Later, he would earn another title, by which he would go down in history: William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy and King of England. William's victory at the Battle of Hastings has given us England's most famous date, 1066. But this wasn't just a battle. It was a momentous turning point in European history. In the years that followed, the Normans transformed England, and then the rest of Britain and Ireland. They helped forge the English language. They built monumental cathedrals and castles, including the Tower of London. The conqueror's legacy would leave a permanent mark on British history. But the Normans didn't stop there. They also left a deep imprint across Europe, from northern France to southern Italy and on to the Middle East and Jerusalem. The Normans were an ambitious band of warriors, hungry for land, wealth and power, but also for spiritual inspiration and knowledge. They would become great patrons of European art and architecture. Everywhere they went, the Normans transformed the language, culture and politics in ways that can still be seen right across Europe to this day. Herleva's dream is a great Norman myth, designed obviously to glamorize William and add to his mystique. But the story contains a simple truth: the Norman hour was approaching. (1066) wasn't England's first encounter with the Normans. In the year 793, their ancestors sailed across the North Sea from Scandinavia. Monks on the tiny English island of Lindisfarne were their first victims. The 8th century cleric, Alcuin of York, described the carnage. "Never before has such terror appeared in Britain. Behold, the church of St. Cuthbert, splattered with the blood of God's priests, robbed of its ornaments." The Vikings had struck for the first time. For 300 years, the Vikings burned and murdered their way across the continent, sailing thousands of miles in search of wealth and power. With their formidable longboats and pagan gods, the Vikings terrorized northern and eastern England, sailed to the Mediterranean and across the Atlantic as far as North America, But the place where the Viking story took its most remarkable turn was just across the Channel from England, in northern France. One of the most successful Viking settlements of them all took root here. It even took its name from them, Land of the Northmen, Normandy. The Vikings began raiding the Seine Valley in northern France in the middle of the 9th century. According to the 11th century French historian Dudo of Saint-Quentin, they liked what they saw. This land is rich and fertile with crops of all kinds, crisscrossed with rivers full of fish, and rich in game for the hunting. Let us subject it to our own power and claim it as our own. Norman history starts here. The Vikings sailed up the River Seine, stripping and destroying the wealthy but very poorly defended monasteries, like this one at Jumièges. These walls are the only part of the church remaining from the ones that the Vikings destroyed. And since the monks were the ones who wrote the histories, it's hardly surprising that they gave the Vikings a very bad press indeed. But the Vikings' reputation was about to change. France in the 10th century was in a state of political fragmentation. The great empire of Charlemagne, that covered most of modern France, Germany and Italy, had disintegrated in the 9th century. France was now a series of warring principalities. The king had little authority. Northern France was there for the taking. But this band of Vikings soon realized that holding on to territory and power required new tactics. The Vikings were led by a Norwegian giant called Rollo. He was said to be so large that no horse could carry him, so he went everywhere on foot and earned the nickname Rollo the Ganger, Rollo the Walker. He was skilled with the usual Viking tools of violence and chaos, but he also cultivated the local nobility and even married the daughter of a French noble. This was to be the model of Norman power. Conquest through terror and force, but then settlement, intermarriage, adaptation to local society. By the start of the 10th century, Rollo's Vikings were unstoppable. Charles, King of France, had no choice but to do a deal. In 911, tradition has it that Rollo and the king met here by the river at Saint-Clair-sur-Epte. Rollo realized that the route to power called for diplomacy. So he swore loyalty to the king, agreed to protect him from other Viking raiders, and promised to convert to Christianity. In return, the king offered Rollo all the land between the river and the sea. The province of Normandy was born. To seal the deal, the king insisted on the ritual kissing of the foot. Rollo refused. "I shall never bow my knees to the knees of any other man, nor kiss anyone's foot." So he delegated the task to one of his followers, who bent down, grabbed the king's foot, brought it to his mouth, and sent the king toppling backwards. It was an early indication that the Normans had no intention of being ruled by anyone. Rollo didn't simply turn Normandy into another Viking war camp. He took the city of Rouen as his capital, and the Normans became part of a great act of political transformation. In the course of just 2 generations, they doubled their territory and turned Normandy into one of the most powerful principalities in France. the Viking minority ruled over their French subjects. But they took Rollo's lead and learned from them too. The Normans became French. They married local women. They became wine drinkers. And within a generation or two, they had abandoned their Scandinavian language. These marauding warriors realized that to make wealth and power permanent, they had to learn how to run a state. And their new neighbors showed them how. The Normans willingly adopted the French social structure and administrative and legal systems. They mastered them with their customary ferocious energy and ambition. Rouen Museum of Antiquities contains a powerful symbol of this process. This is a coin that dates from the middle of the 10th century, from the reign of Rollo's son, William Longsword. You can make out the letters W-I-L-E-L-M-U-S, Wilhelmus, the Latin for William. This is the first time a French territorial prince had put his own name on a coin with no reference to the King of France. So this tiny object is a symbol of Norman power and the Normans' amazing audacity. Wealth for the Normans was no longer simply booty to be looted. They now presided over a settled economy. They were fast learners, turning their newly conquered land into a fully functioning medieval state, based on land ownership, social hierarchy, and efficient government. This was a culture rooted in order and permanence, not anarchy and terror. It would make the Normans even more formidable than their Viking ancestors. But the Normans didn't completely lose touch with their Viking past. Any attempts to revolt against the new order were brutally repressed. In the last decade of the 10th century, the Norman peasantry attempted to oppose the aristocrats. The Norman historian William of Jumièges describes their reaction. The Duke sent a large number of knights who seized the peasants' leaders and many others, cut off their hands and feet, and left them helpless. This peasants' revolt was quickly abandoned. A band of Viking pirates had become a powerful political force. But it didn't stop there. Their reinvention encompassed heaven as well as earth. The Normans now had a new god as well as a new politics. And as with everything they did, they embraced their new religion with fierce enthusiasm. Rollo kept his promise to the king and converted to Christianity. Some people doubted his commitment. One French historian